Welcome everyone to Color Commentary. We are your Pauper commentators, Michael Petchik and Adrian Guarzales. How's it going, Adrian?
I think you very well know the answer to that question, and it is good.
Yeah, it is. I'm doing okay. I've been putting in a lot of hours at work, but I'm here. I left work at a reasonable hour tonight, so I got nothing to complain about tonight. All right, let's take care of some upkeep. We've got some fun stuff to talk about today. First off, as every week, we are brought to you in part by Original Magic Art. Original Magic Art is a online store featuring all sorts of tokens, dice bags, playmats, art prints from throughout the history of Magic and the history of the world at large. And we're an affiliate over there. So if you would like to save a little bit of money and help support the show, you can do so by either going to originalmagicart.store/commentary or by using the affiliate code commentary in all caps when you check out. Either one of those will get you 10% off your order and let them know that we sent you. Once again, that is originalmagicart.store/commentary or commentary in all caps, both spelled as they are in the name of this show, and you'll get 10% off your order. What do you got for us, Adrian?
Well, we have a Patreon for just $1 an episode. You too can hear the full show, including our pre- and post shows, and you get access to our patron-exclusive Discord channel. What else we got for them, Mike?
Finally, we were brought to you in part by Hipsters of the Coast. Hipsters of the Coast is a Magic content hub. They've got all sorts of content for all sorts of formats. Definitely go check them out. Give them a follow over on social media and find yourself some neat content. All right. So, Adrian, you put together the docket for today because I was running a little bit late, if we're being honest. So, banned and restricted announcement. That's the first thing you got on here.
Yep. There were no changes today, date of recording, 3/11. And based on the conversations, I mean, we're going to keep talking about it. People think Gush or Monarch, or both, should be banned. They continue to not be banned. We have to sort of trust that Wizards knows what it's doing. Going into this weekend, we had a very diverse top 8 in the MCQ that we covered on last week's show. Really, if you were to go on that data point alone, you would say there's no problem with the format. Mm-hmm. Top eight different decks. As we get into this week's show, I think you'll find that trend does not necessarily hold true. So really, it's what is Wizards waiting for? Is there really a problem? And where do we go from here? So a couple of questions. I personally don't know how I feel about it. I think I will just have to continue to trust Wizards. You know, they listen to the community on Pauper. You know, Peregrine Drake is a good example of that. They have access to all the data and we don't, which is always a touchy subject. And I'm just kind of tired of fighting it, honestly. Whatever happens is sort of my stance on the bans now, and I'm not going to get worked up until something actually shakes loose. If something had happened today, we would be having a very different show, obviously. What do you think?
So I think that, first off, the MCQ put a lot of eyes on the format, and I think that the point you brought up that, like, looking at that result alone does point to a very diverse format that has a lot of options to play in it. And I think that as time goes on, if they continue to host events of that magnitude, they're going to have even more data points. And I think one of the things that we also have to consider is we do all wait for the BNR announcements on their scheduled dates, but we've got to remember Peregrine Drake wasn't banned on the BNR schedule. Like,
that's true. It was an emergency ban. Do you think that Gush and Monarch, or you know what I mean, Palace Sentinels is really the problem. Do you think that either of those cards warrant an emergency ban?
Well, so I think first off, I do want to address it technically wasn't an emergency ban. They used different language surrounding it. And I think that is important here because they didn't want it to come off as an emergency ban. All they said was that basically Pauper's an online format, which means people are going to be less affected by these changes in the great scheme of things. Like, it's not going to be like one of those things where, like, someone gets this news the Monday before a GP and is all of a sudden scrambling to figure out what they're going to do for it. And I think that's a large part of why the BNR schedule exists, is so that players can plan for upcoming events. Obviously, you can't do it perfectly, right? Like, there's always going to be an event in the vicinity of a BNR announcement, but I do think that Wizards has taken a stance on Pauper being a mainly online format, which is true. And I wouldn't be surprised that if the ban comes down, that it doesn't happen on a specified banned and restricted announcement. That would not shock me in the least, honestly.
All right. But until then, we wait.
Yeah, we'll still find stuff to talk about, and we're talking about the challenge results today. So not a dead format. We're still showing up every week, still talking about it.
I don't know if we mentioned it. The next BNR announcement is in May, I believe. So we have a couple of months to see what other directions the format goes in. Wizards has a little bit more time to make up its mind. Although honestly, it sounds like their mind might be made up. So it is what it is. I am a big hater, for lack of a better term, of people who are constantly trying to play in a format that doesn't exist. By that I mean downshifts, cards that would quote unquote fix certain problems with the format. And so I tend to not really think about that too much, even from like a BNR perspective as well. The format is what it is. You can play it or you don't have to.
Now there's also been weird speculation. I've especially seen this for Modern, because a lot of people were calling for a ban in Modern this time around. The one that I saw bandied around a lot
Ancient
was
Stirrings and Faithless Looting.
Yep. Taking away the last few good cantrips. But I think the interesting thing with that is a lot of people, the sort of counter argument was like, hey, Modern Horizons is coming in what, 2-3 months at this point? Like it's mid-June. So I think maybe Wizards is in a bit of a holding position right now, sort of just like hovering there, waiting to see how these cards impact stuff, because this is the first set of its kind, sort of releasing cards into formats in this particular way where it's intended for a format.
Right.
And it could be interesting. Like I've seen a reasonable amount of chatter about like possible downshifts in it, because obviously half the cards are coming from existing cards, but I wouldn't personally be holding my breath on that.
Right, because if you think about it, the tools to beat Gush, Foil, they already exist. They're Pyroblast, right? So, or Dispel. So it's really hard to think that they will print a more efficient answer than a 1 mana your spell doesn't actually happen.
Yeah, it would have to be like very specific effects that I just don't think we get at common. Like, I'm trying hard to come up with like a really solid way to like sort of fix the problem, quote unquote, but it's really difficult to do that. It's just kind of a little more nebulous than we really can pin down. There's no like clear-cut answer. There's not like one card that she downshifted and suddenly, oh my god, format diversifies 100%.
Right, and it's something we grapple with because we're an eternal format and blue is a thing.
Yep, and I definitely think like if new cards get printed in Modern Horizons that help out with this whole situation, it would not surprise me if they were actually new cards versus downshifts. I'm not anticipating a whole ton of downshifts. I know that, we had Gavin on the show, and Gavin talked about the fact that like that is something they're aware of. So I'm sure we'll get some downshifts, but I'd be looking more towards the new unknown cards.
Right. It's pretty exciting. The set is pretty exciting. I'm very much looking forward to reviewing it. I think there's going to be a lot of gas in it. So yeah, it's going to be fun.
I do before we get into the challenge results, do want to talk about another upcoming set because it touches on another.
War of the Spork?
War of the Spark. Come on now.
I'm trying to make a joke, but
I know.
Yeah, War of the Spark. So crazy. 36 Planeswalkers in the set. A Planeswalker in every pack. Tybalt confirmed common? Question mark.
Well, that's kind of why I wanted to bring this up, because I feel like that's another thing that our community sort of comes around to every so often, is the discussion of what would a common Planeswalker look like. So
I just don't think they exist, but go on.
Yeah, like that's the thing. Like I think if they were ever to do such a thing, this would be the set for it, right? Like if you're tossing in 36 Planeswalkers, sure. If you're going to have a common one, this is going to be the set for it. I just don't think
I
it's going to happen.
imagine there will be a couple that are at lowest uncommon. I could see them getting, so the original run of Planeswalkers were all rares. Mythic didn't exist yet. Since Mythic has come out, they've all been Mythic. I wouldn't be surprised if some of them were rare. That would actually make sense to me. I don't think any set has 36 Mythics in it. Correct me if I'm wrong.
That sounds correct to me.
That sounds like a lot of Mythics. So I could see rare. I could even see uncommon. And the reason I can see uncommon is because as of Dominaria, they've shown themselves to really relax what a legendary creature might look like. And so I think we can extrapolate that to Planeswalkers. And I saw in the hipsters Slack, I don't know if you saw this, I could see Planeswalker. Someone mentioned they could see Planeswalkers with all minus abilities, which would fit flavorfully with the set. And then you could even have that on a common 2 ability, both minus Planeswalker or something. I could see that.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, I don't expect it to happen, but I did just want to sort of toss it out there, have a little discussion about it. I would not be holding your breath for a common Planeswalker. And besides, it already exists. It's called the Monarch.
Yeah. Or Granger Guildmage.
Sure. Granger Guildmage, basically Jace the Mind Sculptor. You heard it here, folks.
Yeah, we have a patron who always changes their name to whatever dumb stuff we say on the show, and so now we're just trying to outdo them. Yeah, you heard it here. Granger Guildmage is Pauper Jace the Mind Sculptor.
All right, let's get into the results for this week, because you alluded to them earlier, and could you maybe run us through what did well this week?
So I'm gonna go one by one. By my count, there are 5 Gush decks, which is really what I wanted to hammer home. The winner was a Gush deck. It was Mono Blue Delver, playing a 1-of copy of Jesse and Thief. J-Series84 would be very proud. But the rest of it's pretty stock, I think, in my opinion. Cool to see Mono Blue back on top, just because it doesn't win as often as most decks. In second place, we have another Gush deck. We have Inside Out. So 2 Gush decks so far. I hope you're keeping track. This one has Tethmos High Priest in it, which is the cat cleric. Whenever you target with a spell, you return a creature card converted mana cost 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So for creatures, we actually have quite a few. We have Augur, Seeker, and Tireless Tribe. Deck number 3, third place. It's a Gush deck. It is Scred Delver. So nice to see that list again. It was king of the format for a long time. Sort of fallen off now, but definitely a favorite. Gush and foil, by the way, in that deck. The first place deck does not have foil, and the second place deck does not either. So this is our first foil deck, but our third Gush deck. In fourth place, we have Blue Black Delver. It is a 4th Gush deck with foil.
Okay. I'm starting to see a trend here.
Yeah. In 5th place, we have Pestilence. So a Monarch deck, our first Monarch deck, 2 copies of Palace Sentinels. Yeah. And then in 6th place, another Monarch deck. This is Boros Monarch. Straight up Boros Monarch, not Boros
Bully.
Thank you. Wow. In 7th place, we have a 5th Gush deck. Yes, I had to go back and make sure. In another Blue Black Delver list, so another Gush foil deck. And then in 8th place, we have, you got it, another Gush deck. Blue Black Delver, playing 3 Gush and 3 foil. So, Mike, was that 6 Gush decks? Did I count right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 6 Gush decks in the top 8. So what happened? What happened to that diverse metagame?
I think it just comes down to the fact that like that one event does not represent the sort of typical week in Pauper. I think it,
and if I go further, 9th place Monarch, 10th place Gush. Right? Am I missing a Gush? No, it's here. 11th place Gush. 12th place Gush. 13th place Gush. You get the idea.
Yeah, like we had a very blue heavy week this week, and obviously like we have been seeing sort of a shift back and forth in the metagame with what decks on top week to week. But I mean, does this format look healthy from this little snapshot?
No, because it is not until uh 15. It is not until hold on. I just saw a Tron deck. It is not until 14th place that I see a non-Gush, non-Monarch deck, and then immediately following it is another Monarch deck, another Gush deck.
So I guess we've talked before about the pillars. Like, how many non-pillar decks? So decks that run no Monarch, no Gush, no Tron.
Okay. If we go that far, we have to get to 17th place before we find a burn deck, which arguably a contender of all the times. Yeah, it's pretty non-diverse. Which is sort of what we talked about last week, where it's great to have a diverse format of the MCQ. It was really awesome. I was surprised. I thought it was going to look like this, but then you go back online, and the reality of the situation is that, well, we're kind of always where we have been. Paper Pauper doesn't necessarily fix this issue, and I do think that what you said, Paper Pauper is the future of the format. I think that makes sense. Yeah, you said that last week, I think.
Yeah,
but yeah, it is pretty disheartening because it feels like that progress was undone. I would have loved to have been blown away by another diverse top 8 here, and Gush isn't a problem, but I think that some people have it in their minds that because of that top 8 they can just brew their way around Gush, and that quite frankly you can't. Is what my opinion is.
Yeah, like there's not trust me, there's enough people playing this format where, like, if a magical deck that just like wasn't Monarch, wasn't Tron, wasn't Burn, had like this miracle Gush matchup, like, sure, someone would have figured it out by now. But yeah,
let's not let that ruin our good time, because at the end of all of this, Mike, we have our 18th place deck played by _ Zodiac, and it is a Tron deck that plays Trinket Mage, and I would really like to talk to you about it.
Yeah, why don't you tell me the good word of mono blue Tron in Pauper?
All right, so first up, I hope you're ready, Mike, because I'm starting you off with 4 Mull Drifters, everyone's favorite derp, followed by 4 Ruin Processors, which is a 7 mana, 7/8. When you cast Ruin Processor, it's a all generic mana. You put a card from an opponent owns from exile into that player's graveyard. If you do, you gain 5 life. All right. You can play that on turn 3. It's pretty sweet. 4 copies Trinket Mage, 4 copies Wretched Griff, which is the 7 mana, 3/4. Has emerged. When you cast it, you draw a card. 2 copies Gataxian Probe. This deck probably doesn't really need Gataxian Probe, but whatever. And then, interestingly, 4 Ponder and 1 Preordain, which are not really common Tron cards.
Yeah, little. I mean, I guess you're mono blue, right? So you have more blue sources to sort of routinely hit those 1-drop costs. And obviously, Gataxian Probe is actually free, but yeah, kind of an interesting thing to see in a Tron deck, right?
So it is a blue Tron deck, but we do not have, out of the instance we do not have Condescend, we do not have Exclude, we do not have Prohibit. We have 2 copies of Echoing Truth and 2 copies of Snap. So bounce spells, powerful bounce spells, sure, but only bounce spells, no actual permission. And I do actually like the 2 copies of Snap because that combos very nicely with our Urza's towers.
Yeah. Like, obviously, untapping lands in Tron is a powerful effect. It's kind of weird, though. Like, I would expect some amount of permission here.
Well, and interestingly, it makes doing it on your opponent's turn not very good. You have nothing really to spend the extra mana on, like a bigger Condescend or something. So really, I guess you're snapping and then playing a Mull Drifter, like best case scenario.
Yeah, which, I mean, isn't like abysmal, right? Like, Mull Drifter is patched together far worse lists than this.
Yeah. Then we move on to the artifacts. We have 3 copies of Chromatic Star, fetchable by Trinket Mage. 4 copies Expedition Map, again fetchable by Trinket Mage. 4 copies of Prophetic Prism, not fetchable by Trinket Mage. And then 3 copies of main deck Relic of Progenitus, which I suppose Trinket Mage and Relic is a good reason to play this deck if you're expecting a lot of graveyard-based strategies.
Well, so I mean, you also then get Ruin Processor, right? Like, I think that's how this deck plans to actually make use of the gain 5 life clause that's included on it, because like a 7/8 on its own is not exactly thrilling. Um, now the fact is, like, this could be a meta call against like Blue Black Delver, because if they cast a Gurmag Angler, you can probably chain together a couple of Ruin Processors and still have cards in exile.
Right.
The catch being, though, then you're kind of feeding future anglers. Though I guess these things outpace them in terms of just being big.
Yeah, I don't think you're super worried about Gurmag Angler. I think you're worried about Snuff Out, though.
Yeah, Snuff Out definitely doesn't give you a great time, but I mean, it does blunt one attack out of the angler. So worst case scenario, like if they angler, you get cards out of their exile, gain 5 life. It at least fogs the angler for a turn. It's not exactly like thrilling, but it certainly works.
Well, another combo we sort of have is we have 1 copy of Haunted Fingraph. So you can use it to remove a creature you don't want to return to your hand, and instead return the one you do want to your hand.
Okay.
Yeah, you like that?
I can appreciate a good, like, weird interaction. I'm not opposed to that.
We also have 2 copies of Remote Isle, the cycling land, a cycling land. 2 copies Seed of the Synod, fetchable again by Trinket Mage. Although I am not really a fan of a monocolored deck fetching Seed of the Synod with Trinket Mage. The reason it was good in like Pig Trinket is because you could use it to fetch your green source if you didn't have one. But in this deck, you have to have blue mana in order to play Trinket Mage. So I don't really like playing Seed of the Synod.
I mean, I don't hate it just so that you don't have like literal Grey Ogre in your deck. Also, like, you're already playing these blue sources, so having one of them be tutorable, because like it does, like if you haven't hit Tron yet, it does push you from 3 to 4.
Sure. Okay, I can see that.
Like, it doesn't put it in play, but like at least it makes sure you can hit your fourth land drop. And I mean, it's not thrilling big magic plays here, and you don't really have much of anything on 4, but it does do a thing. Now, are there any of the other processors that are worth thinking about? Because I'm looking through them right now.
I don't think the other ones are colorless. I think that one of them is black. Well, you know what I mean, devoid, but a black casting cost. Yeah. And I think that one of them might be white, but I don't think any of the rest of them really fit into this deck unless you're willing to splash a different color or some sort of filter.
So
more filters.
At common, I've got 2 of them that aren't Ruin Processor and aren't Mindraker. There are 2 blue ones. So there's Merc Strider, which is a 3 and a blue for a 3/2. And when it ETBs, you can put a card from exile into their graveyard and bounce something. And then Oracle of Dusk, which I actually don't mind. 4 and a blue for a 3/5. So pretty reasonable body against smaller creatures. Devoid, 2 mana, put a card an opponent owns from exile into that player's graveyard and loot.
I do not like that.
You don't like that?
I think that's very slow. I'd rather play like an actual looter.
I mean,
like Merfolk Looter. I would rather just play a card that taps and loots than that card.
Well, I think the difference here is that Merfolk Looter is a 1/1. Like,
okay,
I think that's the big thing. And like 2 mana is not a huge ask from Tron, right? Like that's not like, half your mana on a turn. That is a fraction of the mana on your turn. So I don't hate it as much as I think you do.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, we can have differences of opinion, I guess.
Yeah, always. All right, so yeah, I don't think there's much else to carry on with the processor sort of thing, and I don't know.
Is there a better blue creature we could be playing?
Is there a better blue creature we could be playing? I mean, like
Wretched Griff is fine. Is there a common blue X creature like Hydroid Crassus or no?
No. There's nothing I can think of for that. Like, we don't have many great like X blue spells. Like, there's no like a Stroke of Genius or anything to just like rip cards.
Wretched Griff is probably as good as it gets on that front.
Yeah, Is it just better to play Crusher?
In my opinion, yes, but I do not think that that is what this deck builder wanted to do, because they've given up 3 extra slots to play the main deck relic to go with the Ruin Processor, right? You wouldn't have to do that if you had played. And the more I think of that, the more they've really sort of built their plan around Ruin Processor, right? Like they have the Trinket Mage to fetch the relics, that the Ruin Processor can always have something to put into the graveyard, right? So.
Yeah, like I think this is part meta call, part like someone wanted a spicy Tron deck, and like it is worth mentioning, like not to belittle like the performance of this deck, but this is a 4-3, so this was top 32, just barely. Yeah, like
better than
more than 50% win rate is pretty solid. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think this is the secret sauce, but like hats off to Zodiac for like brewing this thing.
Well, it was the most interesting deck on this list.
Certainly.
And one of the other reasons I want to go over this real fast, the sideboard. Also, there are 2 copies of Snow Covered Island for, just in case. In the sideboard, we have Echoing Truth, Aura Flux, Curfew, Dispel, 3 copies of Serrated Arrows, 1 Aether Spellbomb, and then the one that caught my eye or 2, Consigned to Dream, which is 2 in a blue for an instant from Shadowmoor. Return target permanent to its owner's hand. If that permanent is red or green, put it on top of its owner's library instead. I haven't seen that one before. And then Deep Freeze, 2 in a blue from Dominaria, enchantment. Enchanted creature has base power and toughness 04, has defender, loses all other abilities, and is a blue wall in addition to its other colors and types. Like, what?
Why is that not just Curse of Chains?
Right, yeah, it's bizarre. Consigned to Dream, sure, that's sweet tech. Deep Freeze, you're losing me a little. 4 copies Hydro Blast, then 1 copy Spell Pierce.
Okay, yeah, there's definitely some spice there. I do like that weird color hate thing. Although, what are you like? What red threats are you really caring about? I guess this does really goozle elves, right?
Right.
Like elves has a bad time if you like brick their next draw if they don't immediately have like Distant Melody to clear the top. And it is targeted removal, which is also good against elves to be able to pick off like key parts. So I don't hate it in that matchup, but I don't know. Stompy's not really much of a force anymore, so I'm struggling for other stuff that this could be for. All right.
Yeah, same. There is also a mono black list with Basilica Screecher in it. Kind of interesting. A turbo black land destruction list.
Mm-hmm.
Blue green deck with Ambush Viper.
All right. Yeah, like there are definitely some people out there who are trying out some sort of more off the wall stuff, and that's
right.
Always good to see. All right.
Right.
Do we want to go to the combat step?
Yes, Mike. Imagine you are a pirate of some sort. I'm building up to it, I promise. Imagine you are a seafaring raider, a marauder, and your only goal is to loot and pillage other ships. I present to you a choice. Do you pick up the sword or do you pick up the axe?
Gonna go with an axe. Just real simple there.
Viking, I see.
Actually, my team from work is going to celebrate the conclusion of a project that's upcoming by going to an axe bar.
Is that where you throw axes and drink? Because those definitely mix.
Yeah, I was... It's kind of baffling. Apparently, this place is BYOB, so you can just show up with hard liquor and throw axes.
We have a place like that in Austin too, so that's fun.
Color me unsurprised.
Oh yeah. So many hipsters, so many axes, so many IPAs.
Yeah, it's gonna be an interesting time. But yeah, I'm gonna go with an axe. I feel like I've held an axe and I've never held a sword.
Well, Well, even Vikings preferred swords, but okay. The sword would have been you were a 17th century Caribbean pirate. This is what I wanted to be when I grew up. All right, Mike, what do you have for me?
All right, I want to know, just gut shot away, old border or new border, and I'm specifically talking about like the 8th border, so the swap between the pre-8th and 8th edition borders.
I'm gonna go pre-8th. The foils on those are my favorite.
They are super spicy.
Where the art is not foil, but the border is. I truly think that was the pinnacle of card design. It just looks so good. The picture remains super duper clean. It's very obvious which part is a foil, and it really pops. Maybe because it's just one color. It just really, really pops that foil job. The little star is a nice touch. I could take it or leave it, but really, it's just those old foiling jobs really, really, really look good. And in any color, they look good too. Like, it's not just like, oh, one of them looks better, but like white, brilliant, black looks, good, red looks good, green looks good, blue looks good. They all look really good. Even in the artifacts too, the brown.
All right. I can get down with that. Not to cheat on our 1v1 thing here, but how do you rank like the rest of the like major card frames? So like, where does the M15 card frame fall in for you?
I don't really care, to be honest with you. I think I prefer them in chronological order. So I think I like the first border the best. I think I like the postmodern border the second best. Back when they decided to stop white bordering cards, the black border, old modern border, and then the new modern border, I like the least out of the bunch. I think that the safety sticker or whatever on the rares is a little distracting, and I don't like some of the cleanup they've done. If that, I know that sounds weird. Maybe I'm just a stickler for the past, but I think I like them in the order they came out in.
All right. I can respect that opinion. All right. So axes and old borders. All right. What are we doing for the second half of this show, though?
Well, Mike, I'm so glad you asked. We talk a lot about Gush. We do a lot of deck techs. What we haven't done in a while is just a fun, goofy exercise where we talk about nothing. And so I propose that we each talk about our 10 favorite Pauper cards that we could think of in the 5 minutes before we started doing this show.
Well, I think we came up with lists that are pretty emblematic of the sort of things we like doing, and these are not like definitive power rankings. These are just 10 cards
I like.
Yeah, 10 cards we like from least to most favorite.
Yeah. So we're gonna do this alternating. One of us will go, the other one will go. You can go first, even if you want, and we will talk about what we like, why we like the card. Basically what makes it interesting to us, and we'll be using, I think, the rest of the show time to do that.
All right, I will start us off because I want to talk to you about Pauper All Is Dust Fade Away.
Jeff Mirkola special.
Yeah. So this is a card out of Exodus that used to see sideboard play. Haven't seen this in a minute, but I've actually also played this in Commander. It's a perfectly serviceable card. So it is 2 and a blue for a sorcery, and for each creature, that creature's controller sacrifices a permanent unless they pay 1.
So you used to be able to just, if your opponent was tapped out, just slam this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and the interesting thing is, it creates a very difficult decision because it does kind of tempt you with that option of I can sack a land instead of a creature, which is super interesting, and I think it leads to a very interesting play decision. And I am a big fan of those things in any format I play, and I like having these difficult questions that someone needs to answer. But yeah, Fade Away is a longtime favorite of mine. It's a weird effect, and I'm glad it's in the format even if it doesn't see play. What's your number 10?
Mine is False Summoning, and this is because False Summoning is basically Remove Soul, but it's from Portal Second Age, so it's 1 and a blue sorcery. Play False Summoning only in response to another player playing a creature. That creature card has no effect, and that player puts it into his or her graveyard. So it's it is the only sorcery speed counterspell.
Well, so it's been errata to an instant.
Yes, I know, but it's really sweet to play and then a sorcery as an instant. I don't know. And plus it's the Deter Lizzie art. Deter Lizzie is a really, really, really good artist that really and Jeff Miracle too really encapsulates the older style of Magic art, the not so serious side of it, like more of a cartoony one, which we don't really get anymore. Kaya Folio was also part of that. Phil Folio. I know a lot of that Kaya art's not really for everyone, but it definitely is it's something I miss. I really really like this card, even though I haven't ever cast it, I don't think.
I mean, it's cool. There's a part of me that weirdly wishes that this had instead stayed a sorcery with flash.
Yeah, that would have been really fun.
Well, strictly because like there's an interesting interaction there with Dispel. Like now it is just I'm gonna make the executive decision. I think it's the fancy version of Remove Soul. Like I think that if I wanted a fancy looking deck, I would go with this over Essence Scatter or even the full art Remove Soul.
Yes, agreed. I am in the same boat as you. I would rather play this over those two cards, just because it's funny.
Yeah, solid pick.
All right, what's your number 9?
What is my number 9? Glad you asked. Let me tell you about the good word of soul manipulation.
Oh, Pauper, cryptic command.
Yep, we're just in rare form tonight. So one of my favorite phrases to see on a Magic the Gathering card is choose one or both. That just always excites me because modal spells are great, and having a modal spell where there are actually like 3 modes is really neat. So soul manipulation, a generic, a blue, a black, instant, choose one or both, counter target counter target creature spell, or remove or return a creature from your graveyard to your hand. So the best mode of this is exclude getting you back a relevant threat.
Right. Excluding, and you always draw a creature, basically.
Yeah. And like sometimes this does wind up being overpriced, harder to cast Remove Soul, and sometimes it does wind up being very overpriced Raise Dead. But the flexibility of it is what's really, really appreciated here. It's a fun card.
And we don't have a lot of modal spells like that in Pauper. So
yeah, there's not a ton of like really like we joke that this is Pauper Cryptic Command, but like we don't have anything in that realm of just like that level of sort of toolboxiness.
Right, precisely. Next for me is Standard Bearer. The reason I like Standard Bearer so much is because of how good it looks as a foil.
Really, that's it. There's no deeper.
Oh well, okay. Well, it's also got Ron Spencer art, classic. But also it has a pretty unique effect in the format. I think there are only 2 creature cards that really do this. And then in Magic at large, really the creature that does this best is Spellskite. So, it can really ruin your opponent's plans. It's obviously not for every matchup, but it can really ruin some people's plans. It's almost a soft lock by itself. And I don't know. I like playing whenever I have a matchup and I need this card. Like you really, really want this card. You know what I mean? And so when you see it, you're like, oh, I'm safe. I have Standard Bearer. Yeah,
it is definitely one of the very, very swingy sideboard cards that for some matchups is just lights out.
Right. Exactly.
All right. So at my number 8, I've got. Again, we keep returning to art. This is actually one of my favorite arts in Magic. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Oh, all right. So and number 8 for me is Prohibit. Prohibit is 1 and a blue for an instant counter target spell unless counter target spell with converted mana cost 2 or less. And it also has kicker of 2 generic. And if you pay the kicker, it counters target spell with converted mana cost 4 or less. I love the art on this card. And I really love easy to cast counter spells in non-mono blue decks. I'm a big fan of this sort of effect.
Yeah, and I want to say that in our top so far. It's 3 counter spells. So Mike and I are the fun police.
Yeah, I mean, counter spells are good. Like, they give you a way in blue to interact with stuff before it has a chance to do stuff. And with Pauper being a format that historically has had a bunch of very impactful enter the battlefield effects, I do like me a good counterspell in this format.
It's a goodie.
All right, what do you have at number 8?
Mine is a big spoke in the eye to blue decks everywhere. It is Pyroblast. Again, the art. The fire breathing dragon, the lady, the way it interacts with the Hydroblast art. So good, so good. But also, it is just a red kill spell against blue deck. It's just a red catch-all. It's, again, a very powerful sideboard card that I'm not really a blue mage. I don't really like to play blue decks. Like, sure, they're okay, but I'm much more at home in prison strategies, which we don't really have in Pauper, or, you know, very cheap colorless aggro strategies, which, again, we don't really have in Pauper. So Pyroblast helps shore up my blue defensive matchups, and most decks that I can play Pyroblast in, basically all red decks want Pyroblast. It's a really strong card, and it's really one of the ways that the non-blue decks can help keep parity at times with the blue decks, just because you also have a counterspell now.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is one of those cards that kind of is the cellophane tape that holds the format together at times. No matter how good blue cards get, there is always a 1-mana counterspell in red that specifically hates out them and no one else. So yeah, I'm glad we have it.
And what is next for you, Mike?
What's next for me? So we're at number 7. That would be Gray Merchant of Asphodel. The first deck that I ever really seriously played in Pauper was Mono Black Control. And this is the linchpin of that deck when I started playing. This was the big thing you needed to resolve. And I've enjoyed it in pretty much every format I've played it in. I've never drafted Theros with this showing up, so that might color my opinion on it a little bit.
Well, to be honest, Mike, blue-green was the best color combination in Theros.
Man, I can't get into like linear aggro draft formats. Like, I love me some like Dominaria or like complicated draft formats.
Yeah, and in Theros, like Nessing Asp was amazing, and like Griptide was the best removal. So you wanted a lot of blue-green monster creatures. Also, like Shipbreaker Kraken was a bomb.
Yeah, it was one of those formats that never really fully clicked with me in terms of, okay, I get what I'm doing. But
I played a lot of Theros.
I know, and that pretty clearly illustrates like our different approaches to Magic, because I want my big beautiful machine that like probably doesn't work. I'm trying to Rube Goldberg it up in here, but it usually doesn't get there. All right, so what do you have at number 7?
I have Crows and Tusker. So, you know, big green spell. Big Pig, as it's affectionately called. Almost never play it for its actual casting cost. Instead, it has basic land cycling, so you can cycle it, draw a card, get a land, and I just really, really like that design.
Yeah, I mean, this was a card that was really good and limited back in the day, and it still sees print in like, it was in what, Masters 25, I think.
Yeah, it's a fine card. Good at what it does. Criminally underplayed in this format. The format really doesn't have the time to dawdle around with stuff like that, unfortunately. But it was very satisfying in our favorite brew, Pig Trinket, which if you haven't listened to our shows on Pig Trinket or watched our videos on Pig Trinket, please do. The deck is not competitively viable, but it is extremely, extremely fun to play.
You could argue it never was, but it was always just... if you like Tortured Existence, go check it out. It's that sort of like weird decision intensive deck where there's a lot of different decision points and super enjoyable to play. All right. So at my number 6, I've got Crypt Rats. Again, this is one where like I just really love the art, and like Visions is the only art for this card in my opinion. But Crypt Rats is one of the few sort of like wrath effects that we have in the format, and if you're in a deck that's seeking to recur creatures, it can become a win con, which is really, really neat. And I love these weird, terrible rats.
Bad rats.
Bad rats. There you go. We got there. We got that good internet meme in there. Thank you, Adrian.
Big rat chungus.
What do you got at number 6?
I've got Mole Drifter. Again, pig trinket. No. But seriously, Mole Drifter is a fun card to play. 5 mana, 2/2, draw 2. Drawing cards is good.
Yeah.
And it's a derp fish.
Yeah, it's always been one of the weirder arts. Although you have the F&M ones, which...
Correct. I do like the F&M promo, which makes it look more like a dragon.
Yeah, it's like a weird fish dragon, and I can appreciate that. Like a river serpent with wings.
Yeah, I like Mole Drifter quite a bit.
All right, at my number 5...
what do you have at number 5, Mike?
So my number 5 is Sakura Tribe Elder. So this is 1 in a green for a 1/1.
Pig trinket.
Yep. Again, kind of returning to that well. So Sakura Tribe Elder is 1 in a green for a 1/1. You can sacrifice it to search your library for a basic land, put it into play tapped, shuffle your library. This is a card that I was shocked to find out recently is like $1 because of Modern. But it's just good, clean ramp. There's nothing deeper to it. I enjoy a good ramp strategy, and the fact that it can help you fix a little bit is just icing on the cake. But yeah, I do love me a good old Steve.
Steve is good. As we get into my final 5, you'll find they're all affinity cards. Number 5 is Galvanic Blast, because what's better than Lightning Bolt? 4 damage Lightning Bolt.
Yeah, 4 damage Lightning Bolt with a drawback. Come on now.
If you build your deck right, that's like saying losing life to Necropotence as a drawback.
I wouldn't go that far, but yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
I get what you're getting at here. I think hyperbole, but a valid point nonetheless. Yeah, this is.
I'm gonna go on a limb here and say that Galvanic Blast is really just Pauper Necropotence.
Nope, you missed on that one. Sorry.
Now I'm just trying to be a meme. Yes, I like Galvanic Blast quite a bit. A lot of flexibility. Great burn spell. I've won a lot of games with Galvanic Blast. Let me tell you that much.
And like the fact that it does reach to that like 4 toughness point where like a lot of decks are conscious of Lightning Bolt, but perhaps not as conscious of it. I mean, I guess that's shifted over the years since it started to see more widespread play with the emergence of Boros as a deck, but there's definitely a period where when that deck was coming up where people were still playing stuff that died to it and they couldn't afford to have dying to it. So definitely a role player, definitely a sweet card to have in the format.
Yep. And what do you have next for us?
All right, at number 4, I've got Carrion Feeder. Real simple. Black mana for a 1/1, can't block, sacrifice a creature, put a +1/+1 counter on it.
Me beat face.
I love me some aristocrats. Yeah, this is just free sack outlets are the best way to profit off of death triggers from creatures, and this thing just gets big really quickly, and like that can't block thing is not as much of a downside as it looks like. If this thing just starts like getting real huge real fast, it's gonna outpace whatever is beating in on you. Again, not exactly a deep one, but like I do just enjoy simple versions of certain effects.
Well, I guess my next one is sort of in that vein too. My 4th is Frogmite or Frogmeat or Calfrago. I have a lot of affectionate names for Frogmite, but basically it lets you have some really, really dumb starts in Affinity. Land, drum. I guess that's kind of it. for turn 1. Well, I used to play Ornithopter. You could go like land, drum, Ornithopter, Frogmite, Thoughtcast. Pretty sit turn 1.
Yeah.
I like Frogmite quite a bit. It has definitely gotten me out of some bad situations. And then of course it just beats him for 2. And then that beautiful Therese Nielsen art.
Yeah, and Mirrodin is of course one of the more photogenic planes, if you will.
Right. So Frogmite very near and dear to my heart.
No, that's pretty legit there, man. I do love me. I mean, that's what we made our bones on, right? We started off at you playing Affinity, so makes sense at least one would slip in here. All right, we're getting into top 3 territory here. So let's start things off. My number 3 is Pulsa Marasa. And this was a card that both of us actually panned pretty hard in our set review, if I remember everything correctly. And like every component part of this didn't look good enough. Like returning a creature land from your graveyard to hand isn't like a super hot effect, and gaining 6 life isn't a super hot effect. And the catch is when you put them together and maybe you recur it with a mnemonic wall, this puts in work.
Yeah, surprisingly, the sum was better than the parts.
Definitely. And I think that's why at least we missed it at first, was just the fact that like it didn't seem to do much. And it turns out it does just enough, not much, to be pretty solid. But yeah, I'm a sucker for a recursive card. I'm a sucker for anything that lets me dirtle around a little bit harder, and Pulsa Marasa ticks both those boxes. What do you have at your number 3?
I have Fling.
Just
Fling. I have Fling. The end. No, specifically the arena foil for Fling, which is awesome. It's Stinky Giant Man throwing a Mog. It's raining cats and Mogs. It's also raining ATOGs, because that's what Fling does. I have won a lot of games from ATOG Fling combo. And you know, like you said, this is where it gets real. I play Affinity. You play, black, green, blue, Dirtle. And that really reflects itself here. Fling was just an I win switch for me in a lot of games. I really like the art on the card, Palo Parente. I really like the foiling. It's very satisfying when you think, because Affinity used to be, well, the foil might have changed this. I haven't played Affinity in a long time, but it used to be you would be behind, you would draw ATOG, you couldn't really win with it, then you would draw Fling, or vice versa, and you would think, aha, now I'm going to win this game.
Yeah. Never in a blue deck go shields down against ATOG when you don't know what's in your opponent's hand.
With foil, it's much harder to do.
Okay, fair. Like if you have a free counter spell that you can go shields down, because you're not really going shields down if you tap out, right?
Right.
All right. Let's start rounding this corner here. At my number 2, I've got Grim Harvest. So Grim Harvest is 1 and a black for an instant return target creature from its graveyard to its owner's hand. And then it has the block of text that is recover 2 black. So recover is a weird mechanic. This is definitely a reader. So Grim Harvest has this recover mechanic. And what it does is, if this card's in your graveyard and a creature you control dies, you can pay the recover cost to return it to your hand. If you don't, it gets exiled. I don't know where this mechanic came from, but I really enjoy it.
Yeah, you like it a lot.
Yeah, it's this weird card. Like a 5 mana like loopable Raise Dead is not great, but if you pair it, like the only place I think this has ever really seen play in Pauper is the Pig Trinket deck, which was my absolute love for years. But like pairing this with a bunch of creatures that can sacrifice themselves allows you to really customize when that trigger goes on the stack to return it, and leads to a lot of like very interesting and enjoyable play patterns. So I'm a big fan of it. Yeah, and also Cold Snap's a weird set, so the weird cards from it are kind of always hold a soft spot for me. What do you have at number 2?
I have Thoughtcast. So like I said, not really a blue mage, but I do like I should say, draw 2. I also own original foil printings of this from Mirrodin. I fold out my Affinity deck. I'm sure everyone knows that though. And yeah, casting Thoughtcast is very satisfying. I once had a runner where I cast all 4 of them in one turn. That was a night. Really just a fun card to play, fun to look at, fun to use. Great for drawing cards when you're down, obviously. Yeah, I have and also there's some neat tricks you can do with it if you like sacrifice a Lotus Petal Tit or something, or sacrifice a Chromatic Star. So yeah, just a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, like being able to refuel your aggro combo deck for a single mana is pretty sweet.
What's your number 1?
My number one, you already mentioned it. It is my favorite card to cast in Pauper. It's one of my favorite cards to cast in Cube. It is even a card I enjoy casting in Commander. Pretty much anywhere where this is not laughably underpowered, I will play Muldrifter. I adore Muldrifter. It's a goofy little weird flying fish thing. I probably own 12 copies of this because over the years I've just wanted to have it in multiple decks that were all assembled at the same time. Like, I love me a Muldrifter. Like, plain and simple. And we've joked on the show before that this is kind of the glue that holds garbagey mid-range decks together. Well, turns out I play a lot of garbagey mid-range decks. So big fan of this. The handful of weird interactions with it where you can flicker it in response to its evoke trigger, all that nonsense, absolutely love it. And yeah, I think it's my favorite card in Pauper just over the years. So what's your number one?
ATOG.
Of course. Typical.
I have my ATOGs altered by Jesper Mirfors. One of them is like ATOG, and there's like this. It's like at night, and he's in like a forest, and there's like this tower, and I love towers. I did not tell Jesper Mirfors this, and yeah, just absolutely love the alter. I love the card. It's a huge threat, no matter. Well, if you cast it turn 2, it's not really a big threat, but it's hard to block. It can combo kill your opponent. Just a really strong creature, in my opinion. Sad that Affinity is not the deck it used to be. Really, really sad. I love that deck.
Yeah, I mean, formats evolve, formats change. Maybe, just maybe, the ATOGs get to ride again. All right. Well, that's our little, like, wholly opinionated, no actual basis in fact or numbers episode. But yeah, I don't think either of these were surprising lists, but I'm glad to kind of do this.
It's fun. It's fun to rehash some of the old stuff. None of us picked Gush. None of us picked a Monarch card. Neither of us, I should say. These are all just cards that we legitimately enjoy playing and casting. At this point, definitely some nostalgia. These are truly the cards on this list are truly Pauper of days gone by.
Yeah, I think Gray Merchant is the only one on this list of mine, and maybe Muldrifter that's put up like a result in the past 6 months.
And there's anything wrong with that. I don't, I'm not saying make everything the way it was before. Of course, I understand that formats change and evolve and that things get different. I'm dealing with that in Modern with my Affinity deck. I'm doing with that a little bit in Legacy with my Eldrazi deck. Not as big of a problem there, but yeah, I mean, Magic changes for the better.
Hopefully. All right. Yeah, that was a bunch of fun. You want to take us out of this show?
Yep. Thanks for joining us today. This podcast is brought to support our patrons, including Chuggins. Please consider supporting us if you like the show. Check for this video or this podcast, the script of this podcast, I should say, for details on where to find us. We'd like to remind you that if you listen to this on a platform with reviews, they're always appreciated as they boost our visibility. If you've got a deck list or idea for a topic, you can contact us either via our website or you can email us directly at colorcommentary@gmail.com. Special thanks to my LGS Pat's Games, Mike's LGS JP Comics, and of course, L. You can find our theme song Quantitative and other great tracks over at soundcloud.net/ELLELLELL. Till next week, this is Adrian and Mike, and we are signing off for Color Commentary.